Titanic. From the iceberg collision to the final sinking. On the night of April 14, 1912, at approximately 11:40 p.m., the famous ocean liner, the RMS Titanic, struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean. The lookouts in the crow's nest spotted the iceberg too late. The warning bell was immediately rung, and the bridge ordered the ship to turn while the engines were reversed. However, the Titanic was simply too large to avoid the iceberg completely. The collision did not feel like a massive crash to most passengers. Many barely noticed it, feeling only a slight vibration throughout the ship. But below the waterline, the iceberg scraped along the starboard side of the vessel, tearing open several sections of the hull. When the ship's chief designer, Thomas Andrews, and Captain Edward Smith inspected the damage, they quickly realized the situation was critical. Water was flooding into the first 6 watertight compartments. Titanic had been designed to stay afloat with up to 4 flooded compartments, but 6 had been breached. The ship was doomed. At around 12:05 a.m., Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats to be prepared. At first, many passengers did not believe the ship was in danger. Some remained in their cabins, while others continued talking, reading, or listening to music in the lounges. Meanwhile, the wireless operators began sending distress signals, first CQD and later SOS, requesting immediate assistance from nearby ships. One of the vessels that received the call was the RMS Carpathia, which immediately changed course and headed toward Titanic's position. However, it was still several hours away. The first lifeboats were launched only partially filled. Many passengers were reluctant to leave the warmth and apparent safety of the giant liner. Titanic still looked stable, and few realized how serious the situation had become. As time passed, the bow of the ship sank lower into the icy Atlantic. Water poured through the lower decks and flooded one compartment after another. Crew members worked urgently to load women and children into the lifeboats first. By around 1:30 a.m., the severity of the disaster had become obvious. The forward decks were already close to the waterline. Panic slowly began to spread among the passengers. According to many survivor accounts, the ship's musicians continued playing music to help keep people calm. As 2 a.m. approached, nearly all the lifeboats had been launched. Yet hundreds of people remained aboard because there were not enough lifeboat spaces for everyone. At approximately 2:18 a.m., the ship's electrical system began to fail. The lights flickered several times before finally going out completely, plunging the Titanic into darkness. With the bow completely submerged, the stern rose high into the air. The enormous stress placed on the ship's structure became too great, and Titanic broke apart into 2 sections. The forward section disappeared beneath the ocean first. A few minutes later, the stern stood nearly vertical before making its final plunge into the Atlantic. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 1912, the Titanic completely disappeared beneath the surface of the ocean. The water temperature was near freezing. For those who had not reached a lifeboat, survival was extremely difficult. Within a short time, hundreds of people lost their lives in the icy waters. Shortly before dawn, the RMS Carpathia arrived at the disaster site and began rescuing survivors from the lifeboats. Of the more than 2,200 passengers and crew aboard Titanic, approximately 700 survived, while more than 1,500 lost their lives. The tragedy became one of the most famous maritime disasters in history. The wreck of Titanic remained undiscovered on the ocean floor for nearly 73 years. In 1985, it was finally located during a deep-sea expedition. Today, Titanic remains one of the most famous ships ever built, and its story continues to be remembered through books, documentaries, and films around the world.